we are going to bring up our first guest. And this guy is someone that I have so much respect for. It's amazing how much he's doing and really important work. And we're talking about Jonathan Granoff. I already shared with you a little bit about his work with the Global Security Institute, but he also serves on, get this, he serves on the Nonpartisan Security Group, the Lawyers Committee on Nuclear Policy, Fortune Forum, the Jane Goodall Institute, the NGO and Disarmament Movement, the Middle Powers Initiative. He is the recipient of the 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Bar Association International Law Section. He is also honored by the Rutgers University School of Law. He has received multiple awards from people all over the world, and he's been a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize. So it's a real honor to have you with us, Jonathan, and I'll turn it over to you, Rick, to do your part of the introduction, kind of sharing with us Jonathan's relationship to you and 11 Days of Global Unity.
Sure. And we can add to the list for Jonathan. Jonathan is an advisory board member of We the World. So, and thank you, Jonathan, for your amazing work over the years, your support for We the World, and your involvement with 11 Days of Global Unity.
Aren't we doing an event together later this soon?
Yes.
Why don't you tell people?
So the panels that we are doing for 11 Days of Global Unity cover each of the themes that we've been talking about for, coming up, and the one that Jonathan is on and part of is disarmament. And actually, we have a co-member of that panel named Rivera Sun, and she's involved with the nonviolence campaign, and we are having a great conversation with the two of them, Jonathan and Rivera. But I don't know if you want to say anything about disarmament. I mean, people know that you are involved with the, abolishing nuclear weapons, of course, but so many other things, and it all comes down to human security and what could result in that, right?
Let me ask a question for you, Jonathan. You might have seen in our opening trailer that this show is about providing information and inspiration. So given your unique perch of observing what's going on in the world, what's the information you could provide to our audience about how things are going or not going with peace building? And then what could you offer that might be inspiring?
Thank you. When Rick started We the World, I said, I hope we're so successful that there's no them. Exactly. And that's sort of the goal. And then his website is we.net. And whenever I think of that, I think of this wonderful metaphor in the Hindu tradition called Indra's web, Indra's net. It's the ultimate we net. It's a net that goes in infinite space and infinite time. And each node on the net, there's a gem. And the gem reflects the entire net. And if you touch any part of the net, the entire net responds. And the gem is the center of each of our hearts, which reflects the entirety of the whole. And the state of unity is realizing that secret. So I want to talk about that secret because that's the secret of unity. Unity is not something we create. Unity is. It is. The universe all fits together. Our time and space all fits together. And everything fits together. There's no fissure in existence, as it says in Quran. So for me, part of my path of doing that is moving from the head to the heart, would be moving from the skills that I learned to understand the world to awakening the cognitive capacity of the heart. The heart's cognitive capacity determines all other cognitive capacities. For example, if your heart is in harmony and you watch the sunrise or sunset, you're amazed at the extent of the beauty. But watch a sunrise or sunset when you're pissed off. So the beauty that you saw was only to the extent of the beauty that's awakened within yourself. And your capacity to process the events of the world and learn the lessons that will bring us to our full awakening are determined not by our senses, not by our intelligence, not by the information we have, but by the ability to discern the lesson in the event. Betrayal gives you the opportunity to learn forgiveness. Everything gives an opportunity. That's why the Buddha's first truth, the first noble truth, is there is affliction. There is old age, suffering, and death, and everybody experiences these things. Rick just went through an amazing challenge of facing his mortality. God, we're so glad that your health is recovering with such vigor and strength. Why? Because you have that yes in you, that your life has dedicated to our unity, not just yours, but all of us. And that it will heal you completely, because that's where the secret is. So that mystery of discovering the relationship between our perception of the world and the qualities in our heart is what I want to talk about. For me, going from the head to the heart is the longest journey, but then there's another journey, which is making the commitment to go from the heart to the hand and to bring those beautiful qualities that you find in the heart into action. Love without action will wither into mere sentimentality, and your spirituality will reduce itself to a warm bath and a good massage. Sad to say, not a bad thing, but not going to get you to liberation. So the resonance that takes place when the heart and the hand come together, when our beautiful qualities come into action, the resonance within that is an awakened state of consciousness. So it's not, well, first is to have that pure intention. Second is to bring it into action. That's when the magic happens. So I want to talk a little bit about coming to unity, not disarmament, because that's important, and we'll do that with Rick in a few days. And that's largely about the space between us, about politics, which is very important, the space in which we're not the same, in which we are the separations between us and how we resolve them. That's politics. That's very important. It's a very important art. It's an art. But I want to talk about the heart. I want to talk with this community, my family, about reality. Not just unity and awakening the world, but awakening the self to the infinite light of the soul, the source of unity of life, the source of unity that never changes, the source of the multiple expressions of life. That's the ultimate unity. And that's the reality that sustains everything. And it sustains it through the power of love. So the first principle would be a principle that great Sufi master Bawa Muhaiyaddin used to teach as an aphorism: separate from yourself that which separates you from other lives. Now, on one very simple level, the first level would be excessive identification with race, nation, religion, gender, physical body. Those are things, those are quite real, And they don't necessarily have to be causes of separation. Certainly religion can be used as a source of love and transcendence, and certainly bringing justice in the world through your nation. But excessive identification with these things, identification with your physical form. I mean, we have a physical form, it's very important, but excessive identification with that and excessive pursuit of the things that pleasure that form and the intellect that lives within it and identifies with it causes separation. So to understand the nature of these things, to understand the nature of the body self, the sense self, the intellectual self, and understand that these are temporal things and that they are not what we actually are. So then you look to see what are the qualities that separate us? Anger, jealousy, falsehood, hastiness, lust, pride, vanity, jealousy. Shall I go on? Not necessary. What's important is to see that all of those qualities reinforce the illusion of separation. All of those qualities are centered around the ego mind. And all of those qualities are really a distortion of a divine quality. So love, when the ego steals, it becomes attachment. Patience, when the ego steals, it becomes sloth. Justice, when the ego steals, it becomes zealotry and self-righteousness and arrogance. Beauty, when the ego steals, it becomes jealousy and pride. So behind all of those qualities is a divine attribute stolen and distorted by the ego mind. And what are the qualities that bring us together? And what are their characteristics? Compassion, love, peacefulness, tranquility, justice, patience, compassion. All of those qualities reaffirm the intrinsic unity of the created universe and the source of the universe. And within those qualities, if a person goes into those qualities, the secret of those qualities is they're not performative, they're transformative. And they transform us to the open space that can see clearly the light of the intrinsic humanity that we share. Not that you possess, but that we share, like breathing. We all share breathing. We don't possess breathing. We share breathing. We're actually being breathed, and our consciousness is actually awakening through us. In the same way as breath is flowing through us, life is flowing through us. But we don't possess life, and we don't lose life. It just stops passing through this body. But while it's here, it's our time to find the source of the life. So the secret transformation within the qualities of selfless love and deep compassion is what's called wisdom. And wisdom is that consciousness that can discern the beautiful qualities within us and can bring them into action. That's what wisdom is. Intelligence organizes information. Wisdom finds the qualities and brings them into action. And divine wisdom, divine analytic wisdom, goes into the qualities and then can discern their source and take us back to source. So there is intelligence, judgment that says, I'm going to make the commitment to go to unity and source. And then divine analytic wisdom that discerns the qualities within the heart, love, compassion, and goes deep into them and finds the source. And the source is where the light of consciousness and the divine qualities resonate. And that is a mystery. It cannot be known as an object any more than, can you see the light within your eyes? Can you see the thing that's seeing in you? You can't see it. Can you feel the thing that touches in your hand? You can't touch it. Can you see the thing that knows within yourself? You can't know it as an object because it's that which is knowing. but it can be realized. And only those people whose hearts have fully opened to not just the unity of the human family, not just the unity of the web of life, but unity with the mystery of divine love. They become that. And that's what we want to become. Then we're no longer playing music. Then we become the instrument, and the musician is the source. Then we are one. And being one with the true self, every single person who's tasted it, just tasted it, is a good one, because you'll never be fooled by anything less. And every single person that's become it comes back with the same message. And it's a secret message. It is one, we are one. And it's a secret because unless you've tasted it, it's secret. You dare not put it on a bumper sticker, because for those of us who know the profundity of this oneness, it could cause car accidents. Driving along, remembering it, very dangerous. So you have to tie your camel before you do this. But once you do it, then you'll say, I can do this all the time. I can give someone a glass of water that will actually help heal them because it's filled with love. I can actually dedicate my life to service. And I guarantee if you make that your intention, the opportunities to do it will come to you. We do not set the rules of the universe. We have to learn to be in harmony with the rules. We did not create divine love. The divine creator did. We did not create what we see. Did anybody create this breath? Did anybody create space and time? Did anybody create a story about themselves? Yes. So one of the things that can be a story that helps lead to unity or leads to divisiveness is the stories we tell ourselves. But ultimately, we have to drop the stories. We have to come to our common sense and see with a beginner's mind, a mind of openness, a mind that's always in the present, and a mind that is always filled with love. That has no story. That's always present, and that's the present, doesn't have a story. Then we become the instrument, and the mystery is the doer. Then we are one. That is unity. So the best thing that this community can do is we can be in this season, we can be the living examples of that powerful love that gives us life and the powerful call to know the source of life. That is where the transformation occurs. And we need each other to do that. That's why we're in community. But ultimately, each of us has to do this in the depth of our own being and that intimate conversation with the source that gives us life itself, and come to that with courage and faith and openness. And I promise you, as Jesus said, you knock, the door will be open. Knock there. Don't just knock anywhere. Knock in that center of your heart. And then you will separate from yourself what separates you from all. And then we can be one. May the great blessing that gives us life give us the courage to accept the blessing and give us hearts that are pure, eyes that see clearly, and intentions that resonate with the source of all and everything, which is love. Thank you very much.
Jonathan, that was absolutely beautiful. And, even though we're running a little bit late, there's a question that came up from Shauna. And in essence, I'm going to kind of consolidate it. The question is, how do you resolve within yourself that someone such as Vladimir Putin can have such an impact on the world that goes so against our values for peace? How do you resolve that within yourself?
I try to understand how he got to where he is. If you were a Russian, your story that you would be told from the time you were a child are the invasions from the east of the Huns, that came and slaughtered massive numbers of people in the end of the Middle Ages. That's the main story of if you go to the heartland of Russia, and that a very strong authoritarian leaders like Vladimir gathered people together to stave off these slaughtering hordes. And then, of course, the Swedes invaded them, came all the way down to the city of Kiev. And then, of course, the French invaded them. And then, of course, the Germans invaded them. And then they perceived us as hostile after World War II, when we had a Cold War. And then the Cold War ended, and we said we wouldn't expand NATO. We expanded it. We put in missile defense deployments, which are bogus, in Poland and Romania. That's right on their border. And we have over 700 military bases around the world. They don't have military bases outside of their country. And we have fully demonized him. So he's up against the wall. Now, I am certainly not making a moral equivalency between what that nation perceives or has done in literally violating the most basic principles of international law, which we also did in Iraq. But the biggest difference is that in Russia, because it's an authoritarian regime, in Russia where there isn't basic freedom, in Russia where there isn't the moral agency of the individual, correction is almost impossible. Here in the United States, where we have freedom, every government will overstep its boundaries, and the people have to keep it in check. Every government will make mistakes. And in America, where we have freedom, the freedom to spiritually awaken, and the freedom to make corrections when our government makes mistakes, and the freedom to reach out to people that are different than us, that's the greatest thing that we have. They don't have that in Russia. So the world that Vladimir Putin has grown up in is a world in which it's a victim's narrative, and in which there's tremendous fear. So I understand that, and I understand how he got to where he is. And so there isn't anything for me to work out in regards to that. It's perfectly understandable how he's behaving, and it's perfectly unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And how we deal with it, that's another question. And that takes skillful means, and it takes community building, and it takes people with the expertise in international law and diplomacy. And what I bemoan is that the dialogue in addressing this horrible war that's going on, that we see in the media, in all the media, is military people. Well, military people are important, but military people don't have the skills of international lawyers or diplomats or peacemakers. Military people are the last resort. And in a world with nuclear weapons, the ongoing threat to use nuclear weapons essentially puts the entirety of the future of humanity in the hands of one or two people, and that is just morally unacceptable. So for me, I don't see that that the blame goes to individuals. There are systems that we have to change. We have to move from internationally and in our politics from this excessive identification with national militarism as the way of pursuing security to some degree of planetary realism, and pursue human security. We all share the phytoplanktons giving us oxygen. 60% of our oxygen comes from the health of the oceans. While we're institutionalizing adversity with these huge arsenals, we're neglecting to take care of the future and the living systems that are a gift from God. We are failing to understand that pandemics don't carry passports. And if we have a vaccine apartheid world, it will mutate in places and hit us all. We are failing to understand that if we change the climate of the planet, the way we fuel ourselves, we will impair the very future of humanity. These are the things that we need to change. So we need to focus on human security rather than the illusion of pursuing security in a purely national way. That's Putin's mistake, and that's the mistake we can't make. And that's why an initiative that says we are one human family, we have a vision. It's not something will happen overnight, but we have a compass. And our compass is a compass that's concordant with our highest human qualities. I'm sick of people saying, be realistic. It's not realistic to think we can live in perpetuity under the nuclear threat, or that we can continue to destroy the biodiversity and survive. That's not realism. Realism is what we're talking about here. Realism is developing our full humanity and expressing it through our institutions. Is Vladimir Putin doing that? No. Am I doing that? That's the question I have to answer for myself. I don't have to answer for him. He'll have to answer for himself. Each of us has to answer for ourselves.
Wow. Jonathan, I am so grateful to have you on our planet, on our awakening world, to have your wisdom. And thank you. You know, one thing that comes to mind that I just want to add is I'm really proud of our country and the checks and balances of our country. Our judicial system has really showed up in when you were talking about certain governments that will exceed their power. I'm very proud of how our judicial system has showed up to balance out the threat to our very democracy.
Yeah, it's a threat right now. I did a session on saving our democracy for the American Bar Association, and the second person was Jamie Raskin. We all know about what he did in the Congress. But the first person was the lawyer that put together the first 20 cases against Giuliani when they were questioning the legitimacy of the election. And his strategy was, it happened very simply. The first cases was in front of a Federalist Society, very right-wing judge. And Giuliani started ranting about fraud. So Mark Aronchek was the name of the lawyer. And he said, Your Honor, could you just admonish my colleague to stop making speeches about matters that are not in his pleadings? There's nothing in his pleadings about fraud because there's no evidence of fraud. 60 cases later, all the judges ruled there was no evidence of fraud. And so what I think is serious is that the media frames the issue as who do you believe? That's not the issue. You know, you walk down the street and there are crazy people talking about, you know, hearings, flying saucers because they have fillings in their teeth. They can believe that. Who cares? It doesn't matter what Donald Trump believes or what anybody believes when we're talking about the institution of the state. The state is an institution of law, and we determine truth for the purposes of our institutions through the rules of evidence in courts. That's called the rule of law. So what is actually being challenged, and implicitly by the media, is exactly what you pointed out, the rule of law. And the rule of law, even the right-wing judges said, we go by evidence. So that to me is, you know, I've yet to see, I met Giuliani and I said, I told him I respected him for questioning the election by bringing his lawsuits. And then I said, but I question the fact that you continue after 60 cases, deciding clearly that the election was legitimate, you continue to question it. So my question is, are you assailing the rule of law or are you a compulsive liar?
Wow.
And yeah, and he unraveled before my eyes. It was kind of like in what was the movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark? You know, where the guy just melts.
Right.
His persona just melted, and they had to drag his handlers pulled him away. That's the way. That's what I regret. We don't see that kind of a question in, you know, even in MSNBC or anything. That we don't have people who are professional advocates on our side advocating. We used to have that. I mean, until after 9/11, I could get into public debate, but that to me is what's very serious. But this community has the capacity of being transformative human beings, and to being, as Gandhi says, being the change we want to see. And that change comes about by connectivity with the source within oneself. I wouldn't expect, you know, everybody to be studying legal doctrines and the rules of evidence, but that's what this is really about. You hit it on the head. They are rejecting. Their story is that America is a racial country, the foundation of which is the white community that came here basically in the 17th century. Our story of America is we're the first nation created by a legal instrument. We're the first nation in the world in which white men shared power, gave away power, distributed power, and created checks and balances on their power. Insufficiently, because there was the cancer of racism and chattel slavery, but at least the principle went out there. All men are created equal, which we now know means more than just the men. So we created a system in which the right of change and dissent and creativity is in the Constitution. But that's being challenged. That's being challenged very vigorously. And right, early on, right after January 6th, I did an article in The Hill on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which way back then, this is a couple of years ago, I wrote it, saying that these characters who support an insurrection are not qualified to run for office. Because Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that if you have taken an oath to support the Constitution and subsequently give aid or comfort, not plan an insurrection, give aid or comfort to an insurrection, you're disqualified for serving in an office that requires an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. And finally, that's being tested. And we'll see, Scott.
It's gaining a lot of momentum.
Yeah, but I wrote this article and I was promoting it in the American bar as soon as January 6th happened.
You were hip to it. You were hip to that.
So the point that I'm making is speak the truth and don't expect results. You might see them years later and don't expect credit for it. It doesn't matter. What matters is integrity. But yeah, that's the issue. Will that great power of justice, the blind lady holding the scales of justice, will that prevail?
Jonathan, we could talk to you all night, and next time I think we'll do that. We already canceled an invitation to give you everything. Our chat box is lighting up with so many people appreciating your wisdom. But I do need to move us forward. I do want to briefly, I'm going to introduce two things that are part of Jonathan. This is his teacher. And I think what we saw with Jonathan is he has a brilliant legal mind and a brilliant spiritual heart. And so I think it's interesting to notice that when I asked him what he wanted us to put up, we're going to go take a look at his global security website, but he also wanted to make sure that we talked about this. And this is really the beautiful being and way of thinking that obviously has influenced you in beautiful ways. And you can find it at bmf.org. B as in boy, M as in mother, F as in Frank.org. And pronounce it, what can you
Muhayyideen. Actually, my spiritual name is Ahmed Muhayyideen. Muhayyideen means the reviver of the path in times of darkness. That's my name.
Beautiful.
And aham in Sanskrit is the self, and Tamil it's the same. It's also often translated as heart. So Ahmed is the heart. And Muham in Tamil means the face. So Muhammad is the integration of the heart and the face, or the inner and the outer, the mystical explanation. Sufis tread a path that is bounded by, empowered by, directed by, sourced by, and finished by love. That's the Sufi path.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Pure Land's music in just a moment, but I want to go to the other website, the other part of Jonathan, which is the Global Security Institute. You can find it at gsinstitute.org. And this is where you can learn more about the incredible work that Jonathan and many of his colleagues are doing to provide security for our world. And thank you very much, Jonathan, for blessing us with your wisdom tonight. I'll bring up your partner, Rick, for a moment. Rick, what stands out for you in what we just heard from Jonathan tonight?
For me, what Jonathan has integrated with his life is such an example for everyone, because Jonathan can stand in front of a UN General Assembly and talk on those levels, and he's a Sufi. I guess you're not a Sufi master, but you're on the path in that way. Yes. So, but integrating all of those aspects that's what I'm totally knocked out by. Thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan, thank you so much.